Hey, I'm Olivia, and you're listening to Soarin Around WDW. Welcome back, everybody. It is Wednesday, and we are here with our new episode. We are starting our Parks of the Present series over in Epcot, and I had posted a poll asking y'all what you wanted to see first. And this is a little bit of a debate, I think, between most people who are frequent Disney goers. When you get to the World Showcase, which way do you go? Do you start in Mexico or do you start in Canada? And so I asked, where did you guys want to start for this series? And it was actually very close for a little bit, but then Mexico took off. So we are going to start in the World Showcase, kind of go through some history of the World Showcase itself, and then head over towards Mexico, covering a couple of countries each episode. So to start off, Dad, is that the direction that you typically would go as well when you get to the World Showcase, is go to the left towards Mexico, or do you guys have a preference? Does it depend what you're doing that day?
Yeah, it depends what we're doing, but I think over the years we seem to always go. I guess you're going clockwise, right? So I was going clockwise, starting with Mexico. It just, there's times we've gone the other way too, but yeah, typically that's the way we'd go. Past Mexico first.
Yep, yeah, same here. So, going through the World Showcase, so basically a little bit of history of the World Showcase itself. It is the park's largest neighborhood, so to speak. There's a few different neighborhoods that we'll be covering throughout this Parks of the Present Epcot series. And this is the park's largest of those neighborhoods. It is dedicated to representing culture, history, different food, the architecture, as well as traditions of 11 nations from across four continents. And nine of the pavilions opened when the park opened. There were two pavilions that were not there initially and came later. The first being Morocco, which opened in 1984, and the second being Norway, which opened in 1988. And very few changes have happened since then as far as the countries go in World Showcase. They have not added any new countries since Norway in 1988. Obviously, there have been a lot of updates and introduction of IP or intellectual property to the park since that time. But originally, there were only the nine pavilions when the park first opened. So World Showcase can actually kind of trace its roots back to 1955 when Disneyland was being created. There was an international street that was proposed as this area that would be located kind of behind Main Street USA. And they started talking about this larger international land based around Europe and different locations within Europe that was proposed between Fantasyland and Tomorrowland in 1956 as well. And they had this concept for a boat ride called Rivers of Europe. But then they decided to drop that and instead place in that area where they had initially envisioned this, the Matterhorn bobsleds, which is still there at Disneyland today. One of the most painful rides, if you've ever been to Disneyland, that still exists. But an internationally themed shopping area and dining district was also proposed for the original Epcot when Walt was in charge of designing this city kind of concept for Epcot instead of what it is today, and existing within the central hub of the city's surrounding kind of hotel tower. But once the city idea was dropped when Walt passed, they decided to get rid of the international shopping and dining district and plan to repurpose it into this second gate of Epcot. So in 1972, it decided to be turned into the World Showcase, and plans and models kind of showcase different information in 1974, placing it on the shores of the Seven Seas Lagoon adjacent to the Ticket and Transportation Center. There were two semicircular structures that are similar to what now we have with the Communicore buildings, and they would give a lot of different exhibitors space to have these international exhibits in this neutral area. But then they decided to change that when there was a lot of interest in this World Showcase concept, and there were a lot of people from the world internationally, obviously, that wanted to sponsor in late 1975. So Disney planned on moving forward with construction and wanted to open in 1979. So they started kind of coming up with more of just instead of just exhibits, more for each country to kind of represent the country well. And that's how the actual World Showcase came to be. Now, they do also have things at each country called Kidcot Fun Stops. It is found at each pavilion throughout the World Showcase. And according to allears.net, as of July 2018, Ziploc brand zipper top plastic bags are the current sponsor of these Kidcot Fun Stops. And you kind of look for the sign and the cast member and at each country, and they'll point you in the direction to the station where you'll get now this Ziploc bag suitcase and a special traveler's card from that country, and kids can kind of decorate it at each spot. Now, this has changed a lot over the years because it used to be sponsored back in the day by Sharpie, and you were actually given this paper mask, which is what I remember a lot as a kid, and it was kind of on almost this like yardstick or paint stick that they put the mask on, and each country you would stop and do stamps. And so they would stamp your mask. You'd get to add a bit of decoration to your mask, learn a little bit about the country, and kind of move on to the next thing. They also had another version of this with Duffy the Bear, where they gave you a paper figure of Duffy. And then they kind of moved on to this suitcase now that they have today. So when you go to each stop at each pavilion, kids are able to kind of talk to the cast members at the booths and learn more about those countries. Most of the people that work in the countries within Epcot are from that country, which is really cool. So they often speak the language, obviously, and can give a lot of like true how they, grew up, the areas that they lived in, which is really neat. They also do have something called the World Showcase Adventure, which has also changed a lot over the years. So currently it is DuckTales, and the DuckTales World Showcase Adventure started December 16th, 2022, and continues today. Previously, it was Agent P's World Showcase Adventure that ran from 2012 until 2020. And before that, what I remember it as was Kim Possible's World Showcase Adventure from 2009 to 2012, which actually came quite a bit after Kim Possible was popular. Kim Possible was kind of popular in the early 2000s, and then they kind of brought it back to the park. So it was a little fun, nostalgic thing. I remember when I would go during that time period. But it's basically this interactive game based on the current one is based on DuckTales and the reboot series, which actually ended up ending the same year that they introduced the attraction back in 2022. But they have this Play Disney Parks app. And so guests can join in on that and search for different things within a few of the countries. So it's not in every country, but seven of them participate in this, fighting different villains from the series. And the countries that you can play this game in through the app are Mexico, Norway, China, France, Germany, Japan, and the United Kingdom. I remember so vividly visiting each country and this making it a fun thing for kids with the masks in particular, and just really enjoying the time getting to go throughout the different countries, and collecting the stamps was a big deal. We probably had two or three of those masks that we completed over the years at least, where we would go through each country. But what do you remember about this, Dad?
I remember my guess is Disney probably did this because a lot of the parents were going to Epcot with their kids and going, there's not a whole lot here to do for young kids.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the attractions weren't real, maybe the most kid friendly, or there just wasn't a lot to do. It wasn't like the Magic Kingdom, right? It's kind of like apples and oranges.
That's right.
But I think that's why they introduced it. And I do remember you doing and Regan doing the masks and getting the stamp and kind of looking forward to doing that. And we did that, I think, a number of times because we went to Epcot quite a bit. So that's something we
Yeah.
did with both of you. And I know I did it with Michaela, my other granddaughter, too, one time, I think. That's when it was the Duffy the Bear thing, though, if I remember right. I'm not sure uh, what the whole Duffy the Bear thing was all about. I could kind of live without that. I wasn't like some, classic Disney thing, but I know, getting off key here just a bit, I know in Japan, the Duffy the Bear
It's huge.
stuffy is huge.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so, apparently they're, pulling in some bucks from Japan on that. But yeah, I do remember the mass, and yeah, I have fond memories. You guys seem to have a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I remember going to each country and kind of getting to go back in different little spots that you might have walked past and never really noticed, especially back in like Morocco and different things, that there's a lot back there that you don't see just walking past the pavilion. And I hadn't really been back in these areas consistently, except for the more common ones like Mexico, Norway, France, until last year. My friend Gretchen and I went to Epcot and we did an entire day at Epcot from open to close. And we had some time after we kind of got the attractions done that we wanted to do. We had eaten lunch. And so we went and walked through each of the pavilions and kind of explored places that neither one of us had been since we were kids. And it was really cool to see everything back there. We saw a lot of kids at the Kid Cot stops with the little suitcase things that they do now. And I think it's definitely something I look forward to doing with my kids. I'm glad they still do something like this to kind of get the kids, like you said, more involved in a park that can be a lot more adult focused for people. And a lot of people go for the food and the different snacks and the different drinks at each country, but having something the kids can do along the way that's fun is good as well. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I do remember when Kim Possible was a thing, I was a little too old to kind of play the game, but I remember thinking that was fun. And I think the app idea is a good idea. I wish that it included all the countries, but I do think it's neat that they at least have something. I've known some people and heard some other podcasters say that they've done this with their kids and that it was fun to do. So, yeah, I think it's a lot of good things that they're trying to do to incorporate the kids within these pavilions. So, starting in the World Showcase, we are going to turn left and go towards Mexico. And so Mexico, the actual pavilion was an original pavilion, so was there October 1st, 1982, and it is supposed to resemble this ancient Mesoamerican pyramid. And once you go inside the pyramid, you go through this museum area that has different little exhibits on Mexican culture and history. Once you exit the museum area, you go into the big open plaza, and it's supposed to be set on this shore of a lake at night. And there's different vendors kind of selling things throughout the pavilion. They have all kinds of stuff in this area, which is really neat to kind of look through. It's also very heavily air conditioned area, so it's nice to come inside here and get a little break from the heat. And there also is the Mexican restaurant called the San Angel Inn, or I'm sure it's like Angel Inn. I'm not pronouncing that right, I'm sure. But that is the restaurant that's actually inside of the pavilion and kind of sits along the what's supposed to be a lake that you go through when you go on the ride that we will talk about here in a little bit. And then moving left towards Norway, just kind of going through history of each one, and then we'll go back through the attractions and the food. Norway opened June 3rd, 1988, is the most recent pavilion to be added. And originally, it was actually going to be Denmark. And they were going to have this Lego sponsor for Denmark. And the space was set aside with these themed restroom buildings as well. But then they decided to change it to a more general Scandinavian pavilion. Before then, they decided initially or eventually to go ahead and just theme it directly to Norway as a country. So when the pavilion opened back in 1988, it was the last one on the World Showcase, like I said, to be opened and is the newest till today too, which is interesting to think about because it was so many years ago that that opened. It is a very large pavilion. It's 58,000 square feet. And it's designed to look like a Norwegian village. It has the stave church. The exterior of the main table service restaurant resembles its name in Oslo, which is called Akershus. I don't know. How do you say this, Dad?
I think it's Akershus.
Akershus. Okay. I was like, I can never pronounce these things. We're Scandinavian, but we're from Finland, so I don't know about all this Norwegian stuff. The exhibit also showcases four different styles of Norwegian architecture. So there's the Setesdal style, Bergen style, Oslo style, and Ålesund style. And a lot of the pavilion is actually taken up by these different shops that kind of run throughout. And they do have these huge wooden trolls. If you've ever come out of the Frozen ride and actually walked through the shops, they have these massive trolls and sell Norwegian goods there, as well as different clothes, candy, and statues of the Norse gods and trolls. And then the courtyard Also has the entrance to the Maelstrom, which is now Frozen Ever After. But this was a boat ride into Norway's past and present. We did talk about this a little bit in our Epcot of the Past episode, but it was a really great ride. And the courtyard does also contain the restaurant that we talked about that has a hot used to have a hot and cold buffet and Princess Storybook dining, but now it's actually moved into more of a family style seated plated meal, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But one former exhibit that they used to have there, which I do remember as a kid, was this full-scale Viking ship that was inspired by the famous Oseberg ship. And it used to be like a playground, basically, for kids to run around and explore. That was removed back in December 2008. But I do remember going back there quite a few times as kids and running around and getting some energy out on that play area. Then moving over to China, this was another original pavilion, so October 1st, 1982, and visitors entered China through the large Chinese gate. The courtyard kind of is this replica of the Temple of Heaven, which contains the entrance to the show there, which is Reflections of China, a Circle Vision 360 movie, and kind of goes through the history of China as well as some beautiful scenery from China. And then there's a museum that contains a lot of ancient Chinese artifacts. The courtyard also is bordered by a lot of different shops selling Chinese merchandise, and there are two Chinese restaurants back there, which I don't think I realized. I knew there was one, I did not realize there were two, but it is decorated with different ponds, these beautiful bridges, and they do have from time to time Chinese acrobatic shows that perform frequently in the pavilion. If you walk far enough back in the pavilion and then you go watch the music video for the song Reflection from Mulan, you'll notice a lot of the scenery because it was filmed there by Christina Aguilera, who at the time was very unknown. Her actual first album did not debut until 1999. So when Disney hired her to sing Reflection, she was just like starting to make her break as a music star and then obviously became huge afterwards. So some really cool things in the different pavilions as far as like just some of the background before we move into the attractions. But are there any of these pavilions that you remember going to a lot? I know we definitely frequented Norway because of the Maelstrom ride, obviously, but Mexico is always a stop because also it had an attraction. China, we'll talk about a little bit more in the attraction section, but I had not really explored this that much. Is there any one more than the other that you prefer to visit, Dad?
You're right. We never missed Norway, and it's not just because we're, even though,
Finnish.
Finland, yeah. And we always typically did Mexico. It's funny though. I remember just walking through Mexico and going through into the pavilion and all the little stores and trinkets they're selling. And maybe it's because I'm a guy and I could care less about that stuff. So I just kind of worked my way to the ride. We did the ride and we got out of there. But I thought it was a very well done pavilion. In China, I think I've seen the movie once or twice all these years. It's really good, but I don't think I've spent a whole lot of time walking through there. I know I've been through the whole thing maybe once or twice. That's probably it. But yeah, never missed Norway, and we never missed going into the Mexico Pavilion.
Yeah, and I think now with Mexico, as we move into the attractions, so it has Gran Fiesta Tour currently starring the Three Caballeros, and that opened April 6th, 2007. But it's a musical dark boat ride that was housed within the pavilion itself. And it was the first World Showcase attraction to feature Disney characters that was based on existing property. So they actually did not have any other World Showcase rides at the time that were based off of intellectual property. Everything else was more historical, which has obviously changed today. But initially, when the pavilion opened in 1982 until 2007, when it changed to this, the El Rio de Tiempo was just a boat ride that kind of encompassed the culture of Mexico. And once it was given the overhaul to kind of fit more of the direction they were going with, including IP, it changed to the Gran Fiesta Tour starring the Three Caballeros. But as kids, I do remember it was much more of like an educational, traditional boat ride through Mexico than it is today. I mean, it's still very similar, but they just incorporate Donald and the Three Caballeros, within the ride. The attraction kind of starts off with these posters saying that the three caballeros are going to perform a concert. You get in the boat, float around this Mayan pyramid and volcano to the back of the main room, and then you enter a tunnel where you kind of get introduced to the different three caballeros. Panchito, Pistoles, Jose, Carroca, and then Donald Duck, the third member of the group, has run off. So they set off on this frantic search for their missing friend Donald. And then the next few scenes kind of go through Mexico and Jose and Panchito kind of going through this flying poncho, which they call a magic serape, looking for Donald. And then as you move into the next room, it kind of reminds a lot of people of It's a Small World, where they have all these kind of dancing animatronics. And then Donald Duck is featured as a piñata. And then you go into this cave where they have this live action footage of the Caballeros. And you leave the cave and go to this mariachi band where they kind of set off and find some Mexican girls. And then Donald and Panchito and Jose kind of pull Donald away from the girls in there. Then in the finale, they go into Mexico City where they have all these fireworks going off overhead, and then they do their little concert. So it's a cute little themed ride. It's supposed to be very similar to all of the other Flume System attractions that it's actually manufactured by Aerodynamics, who did other dark rides like It's a Small World and Pirates of the Caribbean. And Eric Goldberg is known for animating the genie in Aladdin, but he also directed the animation for the ride, which I thought was interesting. And on December 4th, 2015, animatronics of the three caballeros from the Mickey Mouse Review, that if you listen to our Parks of the Past Magic Kingdom episode, one of their episodes we covered the Mickey Mouse Review, which used to live where the Mickey's PhilharMagic show is today, and featured a ton of really cool animatronics. So the three Caballeros were featured in that show, and those animatronics had been sent over to Asia and were used there, and then now brought back to this attraction in the finale to replace projections that had been there previously, which I think is really cool that they were able to keep these, transfer them over, and then bring them back. I just thought that was really, really neat. Is that a show that you ever saw, Dad, the Mickey Mouse Review, when you were at Magic Kingdom when you were younger?
I never saw it, and I really wish they would have. One show I wish they would bring back to the Magic Kingdom or
Yeah,
somewhere. I think that would be awesome.
yeah.
Maybe they will. You never know, but they don't have a real big habit of doing that at Disney. So I went bet on it. But no, I never got a chance to see that show.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's someone that Regan and I both said we really would have loved to see. And you can watch some YouTube footage of it, which is neat, but just the amount of animatronics and the music and everything, it was just really cool. So I'm glad they're kind of reusing some of these animatronics and bringing them back to life through some of the more recent things, obviously after some refurbishment. But this attraction is one that, while I like the Three Caballeros addition to it, I think it makes it a little more fun. I am very shocked that they have not turned this into a Coco attraction because of how popular Coco is. It would fit perfectly. It just makes more sense. And I know Disneyland is getting a Coco attraction there, but I just feel like this is already set up. They would really only have to change very minimal things and add in some animatronics of the Coco characters and the Day of the Dead. Just the whole thing fits with the pavilion. So I am very surprised that they haven't changed that yet. Have you seen Coco, Dad?
Don't hate on me, but no, I haven't.
Oh, it's so good. Okay. They're making a Coco 2 now. That was just announced recently a few weeks ago. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about Coco 2 because I feel like the first one was good on its own. But I am very surprised that they haven't changed it to this just because it fits. The music is great. It's something they could incorporate and more popular IP. And then moving on to Norway, there are two different attractions technically here. One is more of a meet and greet that just has a wait time attached to it. So meeting Anna and Elsa, you can do it at the Royal Summer House, and that opened June 17th, 2016, when the pavilion got a huge makeover into the more frozen Norwegian theme that it is now. The description that is online is Arendelle's royalty proudly welcomes guests into their summer house, a place that is said to be home to the family summer vacation in Anna and Elsa's very early years. The inside of the house actually holds about 15 to 20 minutes worth of the line, and the interior of the house is very well themed. So you kind of go into the living room where there's this fireplace and a table. To the side of the staircase, you spot these two little dolls that kind of look like Anna and Elsa. And then after that, you go into this small hallway where there's this tapestry that actually looks like the three-headed troll from the Maelstrom ride, which is really cool. Just gives a little nod to the original attraction. And then in the last room is this family room, and then you enter from there into where you meet Anna and Elsa. Previously, before this opened, I guess you could meet Anna and Elsa over in Magic Kingdom at the Princess Fairy Tale Hall when it first opened. I do not remember that, I guess mostly because we weren't really going into that meet and greet area, and I was still really bitter that they took away Snow White and gave us that Fairy Tale Hall. But yeah, you used to be able to meet them at Magic Kingdom until this pavilion opened, and then they brought them over here. The wait time is listed in the app, and Eiley and I just did this for the first time a couple of weeks ago when we were there in March, and the wait time seemed to be very accurate. It said 30 minutes, and that was just about right. It's nice that some of it is inside, so it is a little cooler than standing outside for a meet and greet. We did have to wait outside just a little bit. You can't bring food or drink in there, so that's a little bit of a pain when it's a long wait and you've got little kids. We saw a lot of very sleepy little kids when we were waiting in there, but just check the wait times so that you know, and it probably is accurate. If the queue is anywhere outside the building, it's going to be more than 20 minutes. So just keep that in mind. Did you do this meet and greet ever with Makayla, or did you see them when they were over at the Fairy Tale Hall, Dad?
I don't remember us having her meet Anna and Elsa. She met all the classic characters, Snow White, Cinderella, and all that back in the day when she was real small. But I don't ever remember. I can almost guarantee we never saw Anna and Elsa with her.
Okay. Yeah. And that's what I don't remember ever seeing them at Magic Kingdom. But like I said, it's not really a time when we were doing meet and greets that much. So we didn't go over there. But it's a nice meet and greet area. It's nice that you can meet both when you're already waiting for one. You don't have to go to two separate places. So I did like that. And the house was very cute. Lots of little hidden gems and things towards the Frozen movie and towards the Maelstrom, which was cool. And then Frozen Ever After officially opened June 21st, 2016. And this is a musical reversing Shoot the Shoot Dark ride. It is also at Hong Kong Disneyland, Tokyo Disney Sea, and currently under construction at Disney Adventure World and Disney Studio Parks in Paris. So on September 12th, 2014, Walt Disney announced that the Maelstrom attraction would be going away and would be replaced by a Frozen attraction. The final day of operation for Maelstrom was October 5th, 2014. So it took about a year and a half for this Frozen attraction to come to fruition. In June 2015, the then Disney Chief Operating Officer Tom Staggs revealed that they had these plans for a Frozen attraction and they were discussed prior to the film's release, but they were accelerated after the film became extremely popular when it released. And when a lot of people asked, converting this portion of the Norway Pavilion into an attraction based on a fictional character, was that appropriate for the World Showcase? Staggs responded that if the goal is to give people a taste of something like Scandinavia with the Norway Pavilion, then Frozen would only increase to the extent to which people would be drawn to it. So to me, it doesn't seem out of character at all, which I agree with. I get that Epcot is supposed to be more towards the educational side, but I think by bringing in these IP characters, it just draws more people to that area, therefore leading them to the restaurants and kind of learning more about the culture, going to the Kid Cot stops, and it just makes it more enjoyable for a larger group of people. And so I don't really have a problem with them bringing the IP into these attractions. How do you feel about that, Dad?
Well, they made Epcot, it was supposed to be the city of tomorrow, right? And that's what Walt wanted. And of course, after his passing, there's little pieces of that, I guess. And then it was supposed to be the permanent World's Fair, which is World's Fair is typically a very educational, or of course, the World Showcase, to visiting all the countries. A lot of World's Fairs had things like that. But I could see why they did the Frozen. The Frozen was so big, And even though I miss Maelstrom, because why? We all went, we all probably could recite the whole thing, probably today,
Yeah.
their own narration. But I could see why they did it because it's so popular and it just brings more people in the park. Let's face it, it's a dollars and cents thing, and unfortunately, that's sometimes what kind of wins out at all theme parks, not just Disney. So.
Yeah, and I know, yeah, but Maelstrom in particular was one of our favorites, so I feel like that was even harder to lose an attraction to get this. I wish they could have done something maybe like in addition to it. And as much as I love the Frozen ride and my kids' faces lighting up whenever they go on that, I still feel like there's a lot of empty areas in that attraction compared to Maelstrom, which had stuff in every little corner. I feel this way about a lot of the rides that they have done recently, but it's like Tiana's very similar compared to Splash, where there's animatronics everywhere. Tiana's is a little more empty now, which is kind of sad. So I think I like the idea. I wish they would go back in and zhuzh it up a little bit and fix the faces of the characters that significantly do not match their skin tone anymore. That looks a little funky. They've kind of gone out of the technology that they were when they first came out. It was incredible, but now it's struggling a little bit. So yeah, I think it's interesting. But they did first release the details of this attraction and reveal its final name, which is Frozen Ever After. And the attraction uses the same ride vehicles that were used for the Maelstrom, of course, because it is the same track. The audio animatronic figures that were used for the attraction feature improvements in the facial animation, which we just kind of talked about. Those facial animation figures were first used on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which opened in 2014 at Magic Kingdom. And the audio animatronics were the first ever all electric audio animatronics. The previous ones either used pneumatics or hydraulics. And now there's no new songs in the attraction, but some of the original songs were kind of revised a little bit by the song's original composers to kind of make sense of the story when you're going through it. So yeah, while it was very high tech for the time when it opened, that kind of faded quickly and now they need to update some things. So hopefully they'll do that at some point. But on May 20th, 2016, Disney Parks then revealed that the attraction would open June 21st of that year, so just about a month before it did actually open. And on opening day, the wait times for this attraction were over 5 hours long. The line started back in the China Pavilion, and Epcot employees had to give out ice cream and water bottles to the guests in order to cool off in the hot sun. If you can picture waiting in line outside for hours in June in Florida, that just sounds miserable. I don't think I would wait for any attraction for 5 hours. I think the most I've ever waited for an attraction is 2 hours, and that is a long time to wait for a 2 minute ride. So, yeah, I think that's actually crazy. I did not know that the wait times were that long. This ride does have chronically long wait times. It's one that you either want to rope drop or get a fast pass for because oftentimes it's an hour plus wait, especially during busy season. It can get even higher than that. So check the wait times. Sometimes they do boost up the wait times longer than what they say, but this can be a really long wait in this attraction. So just be prepared for that. And then the Reflections of China, this opened May 22nd, 2003. So a little bit later after the pavilion was open because the initial show was called Wonders of China, and that was what was there when the park opened in 1982. The updated version is Reflections of China. And then now they have announced that they will be replacing this by a new film called Wondrous China, which was originally supposed to open in 2021 with Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary, but then was postponed indefinitely until further notice due to COVID. And now it's been 4 years past that, and they still haven't updated it. So I don't know what's going on with that. But the current show is narrated by an actor playing Li Bai, who is supposed to be this ancient Chinese poet, and they take the viewer on a tour through the Chinese countryside, as well as some historical structures and buildings. So things like the Great Wall of China, the Forbidden City in Beijing, the Terracotta Army, as well as Hong Kong and Shanghai, some different kind of obviously highlights of China. I am sure we saw this as a kid. I do not remember seeing this as kids. I have not seen it since I was a kid, so it's one I want to go into just to see because I think it would be interesting, but I have not done this in a long time. It's has it been since we were kids, since you saw it, Dad, or since a long time ago?
Yes. I have not
Okay.
been in it since you guys were little.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a bad movie. I just for whatever reason, I don't find myself wandering into the China Pavilion very often. I just never have. I have a little bit here and there. Um, yeah, I don't eat. I mean, a lot of Chinese food I don't eat. Not that it's bad, but my wife loves it. Yeah, I just don't find myself wandering in there that much to check it out. But I remember seeing the movie probably once or twice, and I thought it was very good. But yeah, it's probably been what, 20, 20 some years since I've seen it. So it's been a long time.
And it is it seating? Like it's like round seating, like the 360 circle seating, or
I believe so. And then there's another
okay.
movie, and then I think it's is it the French
France.
Pavilion that has the movie?
Hmm.
That one is not. That's more of a elevated theaters type seating. Maybe more, almost more like an IMAX setup, if I remember right, like the Canadian movie, Circle Vision 360, they call it. So,
Yeah, that's right. Canada does have a movie too. Yeah. Okay. So that's a little bit about China. Again, yeah, I went in it briefly with Gretchen to the pavilion, but I did not actually go into this movie. We just kind of wandered through the shops and so we were surprised at how much was back there because we hadn't really wandered back there in a long time. Kind of walked past it, see like the beautiful, right near the lagoon. There's a really cool place to take pictures, and that's often where Mulan is for meet and greets, which we'll talk about later too. But yeah, I have not seen that, so it's on my list to do when we get back to Epcot sometime soon. So, moving on to the dining in these pavilions. So, in Mexico, there are quite a few little places to grab food. The first is Choza de Margarita, and this is actually a pretty recent addition. This opened November 2017. I actually did not know that they serve food here. I knew they have all different kinds of frozen and regular margaritas of varying flavors, as well as some different kind of quick eat food. So tacos, empanadas, tostadas, and quesadillas. And then there is La Cantina de San Angel, and that opened September 15th, 2010. This is rice bowls, tacos, nachos, empanadas, as well as some more plain kid options also. They do also have churros and churros sundaes, as well as some different frozen and regular margarita options. And this is right across from the Mexico Pavilion on the water. This is the quick service side of things, but they do have this sit down area for dinner, which I actually did not realize until a couple of years ago. And that is called La Hacienda de San Angel. And that opened the same time, September 15th, 2010. But it's a sit down area only for dinner. During the day, it's just kind of open seating on the inside for lunch, which I don't know if they did that during COVID to help kind of keep people away from each other. But one day in, I think it was 2021 when we went for a trip, or maybe 2022, we wandered in there to see what was in there, and people were just eating their lunch from the quick service inside. So I don't know if they still do that or not, but it was a nice little air conditioned spot that you can kind of look out over the, World Showcase and see the water there. But at dinner, it's a very popular place for people to try to sit down kind of during the fireworks and watch everything from right inside there, which is cool. It's a very good spot. Even the quick service area, you can have someone get there and sit and reserve that spot for the fireworks. It's a really good place to sit as well. But the interior dinner portion, so the La Hacienda de San Angel, that has some very expensive house specialties on their menu, including a tomahawk steak that's $120. There's a catch the day daily fish for 42, grilled shrimp, fish, and scallops served with vegetables, as well as corn tortillas for $72. And then you also can substitute a New York strip with that for 30 additional dollars. So it's very pricey. They do have other varying entrees like tacos and enchiladas that are more reasonably priced, but I did think this was quite a pricey menu for this restaurant. We have never eaten here for dinner. We've eaten at the quick service for lunch a lot. I actually prefer to go to the quick service lunch and grab a margarita there because I like just a traditional lime frozen margarita because it's always hot when you're walking around Epcot rather than waiting in the other margarita station, which has more different options, different flavors, but it usually has a very long line. Quick service usually moves pretty quick. The nachos are good there. The quesadillas are good there. The empanadas are good there. So I definitely recommend that. And then there's the San and Hell Inn restaurant, which is inside. This opened with the pavilion on October 1st, 1982. This has a very similar menu to the other sit-down restaurant, but it has been there longer. It's inside the actual pavilion, so it's air conditioned. You kind of sit along the water where the boat ride goes through, and there's no house specialty pricey menu. It's more like the traditional menu that serves, empanadas, different things like that, tacos, quesadillas. And it kind of ranges between 22 to $54. It does have a large bar menu. I did eat at this restaurant one time many years ago with Mom, Aunt Ruth, and Latoya, and all of us thought it was okay. We really didn't love it. It was expensive. There's so many other places to eat in Epcot that I've never been back. Have you ever eaten at any of these restaurants or any of the sit down options, Dad?
Well, Doreen's definitely done the margarita stand that has the long line.
Oh,
We,
yeah.
she's done that when we right before we go to like one of the concerts front of the American Pavilion.
Yeah.
The Flower Power concert series. We did a lot of those with you and Regan
Yeah.
too when you were young. But
Hmm.
yeah, so we do that, and yeah, we went into the restaurant inside. I always thought I want to eat there because it was such a super cool atmosphere. It's kind of dark in there, and but then we went in there and did it. We took Doreen's mother, my mother-in-law, with us. This was probably about 10 years ago. And it was so dark you couldn't even read the menu. It just had this little candle burning in the middle. It was,
Yeah.
and then we got our meals, and none of us were impressed with the food for what we had to pay. We thought it was way overpriced for what the food was. It could have been so much better if the food was better. I don't mind paying the price if the food's great, but it was a
Right.
very big disappointment. And I've never been back, and I probably never go again. So
Yeah, I feel like I actually enjoy the quick service more than what I paid for the sit down, and so I just did not think it was worth it. Word of caution, the margaritas can be every time I've gotten one, and I do not drink a lot, so I'm not a great baseline, but they're very strong. So if you are about to go walk to Norway, which is right next door, you cannot bring it inside the attractions, the meet and greet, or the ride. So you'd have to drink it very quickly, which would cause some problems. So just make sure if you're going to get one, you have time to stroll around before you have to go do something else. And then moving over to the Norway Pavilion, there are a couple of places to eat here as well. There's the Kringla Bakery Og Cafe, which opened May 6th, 1988, and it features different pastries like cream horns and open-faced salmon sandwiches as well. They do have something called Viking coffee, as well as frozen Viking coffee, which is basically Bailey's Irish cream liquor in this coffee. And so there's a regular option, a frozen option. I don't like Bailey's or coffee, so this is not something that's up my alley at all. But I know people say that it's good. They also have these Nordic draft beers. I've actually never been in this bakery. Have you been in here ever, Dad, or stopped by it?
yes, I actually got Norwegian coffee cake there a
Ooh,
few
that sounds
years back.
delicious.
My Your grandmother, my mother, Audrey, made that when we were younger. It was a very special. It was very hard to make, but it was very light and it had some really good white frosting on it. I mean, it was all the all the sugary stuff that I like. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I got that there, and it reminded me of the Norwegian coffee cake my mom made when we were young. But it was very good. I think I might have got another Danish or roll or something there at some point, cinnamon roll or something there at one point too. But probably one or two times. That's about it that I've ever. I don't make it a point to go there. I just wanted to check it out and try it.
Yeah, that's so funny. I did not know the coffee cake that she made was Norwegian coffee cake. I just looked up a picture right now while you were talking, and it looks just like what she made. And I actually still requests that for my birthday every year, and I have her handwritten recipe card, a photo of it, that we make it off of her recipe every year for my birthday and often for my kids' birthdays if they
Oh,
were,
wow.
well, for Eileen's. So, and we still put the thin layer of frosting on the top, just like she did. So that's, I'll have to try it. I love that coffee cake. So I didn't
Wow.
know they had that there.
Yeah. And again, that was a number of years ago. Whether they have it now, I don't know, but they did have it then. That was probably 10 years ago, but it was really good.
Yeah, cool. That's cool. And then they also have a very popular restaurant, which is the Princess Storybook Dining at the Akershus Royal Banquet Hall. And again, this used to be a little bit different and now has evolved. It was, initially more of a traditional Norwegian experience before it became Frozen. Even before Frozen, though, they started doing this Princess Storybook character dining, but now it is character dining for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the original restaurant opened May 6th, 1988. And the way that it differed from other restaurants was that it had this buffet with both hot and cold dishes at the time. They had pickled herring, meatballs, cold cuts, and salads. And then started the Princess Storybook Breakfast back in 2002. So quite a while before Frozen even came to this pavilion. And then switched to the Princess Storybook Dining for lunch and dinner on April 10th, 2005. And the building is patterned after a medieval fortress in Oslo. Now, today, the breakfast is more of like a family style plated meal, but they do, I believe, bring, I guess they have it's unlimited, I believe. So other than Norwegian waffles, it's a pretty standard Disney buffet type breakfast where they have, bacon, eggs, sausage, that kind of a thing, fruit. And for breakfast, kids are $38 and adults are $59. Lunch and dinner, it's a little bit of a different menu, and it's $46 per child, $69 per adult. And the menu is Norwegian meatballs, seared salmon, cabbage, macaroni and cheese, mashed potatoes, carrots and green beans, assortments of desserts. And then they have this bread, cheese, and salad, as well as chicken with apple and fennel preserves. The only reason we have never tried this is because it's expensive and character meals, we really want to pick something where we're going to want to eat a lot of food. And I'm nervous about the food here, so we have not tried it. I don't think that I wouldn't like the Norwegian meatballs and stuff. I don't know that my kids would eat much of this. So that always makes me kind of shy away from things. I also was under the impression that you would get to meet Anna and Elsa during this meal, and you do not. So the princesses that are usually seen here are Snow White, Tiana, Belle, Aurora, and Ariel, which is still really cool. I think it's awesome that they included Tiana because there's not a lot of places that you can meet her. And if you listened to my trip recap and our tragic story of how we didn't actually get to meet Tiana at the Tiana meet and greet in Magic Kingdom, she's high on our list to meet. So that is a reason that I would consider doing this. Maybe we would do the breakfast. Have you ever done this with Makayla, Dad?
We did.
Okay.
I'm trying to think when it was. She was probably 7 or 8 years old, so probably 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. We thought
Yeah.
we'd give it a shot. I always wanted to try. It's like, let's go check that out. And I think we did the breakfast. So we played it safe because we knew
Yeah.
we were like all the breakfast food. And so it was really good. It's incredibly pricey though for really what it is. But
Yeah.
again, I know I say that all the time, but it's just the Disney way. And the princesses were there. All those princesses were there. And remember, they marched around the room following the princess, and they gave them little instruments to bang on and stuff.
Oh,
And
that's
I
funny.
remember Makayla doing it. She was a little bit older than the kids, and like kind of rolling her eyes, like, oh, I don't really want to do this.
Yeah.
But it's a neat building. It's a neat restaurant. Would I really want to go there again? Maybe if I was going there with your kids, my other two granddaughters, it would be probably a lot of fun. But I would definitely head toward the breakfast option for sure.
Okay, yeah, that's good advice. Maybe we'll do that next time we go to Epcot with you guys because I feel like my favorite, which we'll talk about later, character meet and greet and meal in Epcot is Garden Grill, which we did with you guys last year. I just think the food is incredible and it's cool to have the original characters, but to do a princess thing, my kids would probably go nuts over. So I think the breakfast might be a good idea for sure. And then moving to China, there's two restaurants in China, as I mentioned earlier, as well as a tea kiosk. And I did not know this. I knew about Nine Dragons, which opened October 23rd, 1985. And the appetizers kind of range from $10 to $16, entrees from $25 to $35. So for Chinese food, that's pretty pricey. They do also have desserts from $12 to $14. And they do have a full three-course meal that will run you about 50 to 60 bucks, not including drinks and gratuities. And they do have a lot of typical Chinese food. So wontons, bao buns, pot stickers, spring rolls, honey sesame chicken, beef stir fry. I did not see fried rice on the menu, which is what I almost always get. And I also get wonton soup, which I did not see on the menu. So I don't know that I would necessarily eat here, but it is suppose people that eat there have said it's very good. And then the Lotus Blossom Cafe opened with the pavilion October 1st, 1982. This is a much more limited menu, but much more what I would eat. So pork egg rolls would definitely eat those, chicken pot stickers, which I would eat. They do have orange chicken with steamed rice, and then also Chinese fried rice with a pork egg roll and a fortune cookie, like these kind of combo meals, Mongolian beef noodles, and stir-fried vegetables. And so that is definitely more up my alley. Seems a little bit more like a quick service Chinese food option. The price range is much better. So I we will consider eating there in the future because we do like that kind of food. And then Joy of Tea, that is just a little kiosk that serves pork egg rolls, but also has like bubble teas, hibiscus iced tea, oolong tea, and those kind of range from about $5 to $8. I know bubble teas are extremely popular. I'm like a very big texture person, so drinking anything where like something of substance comes out in a straw that's not like blended makes me want to gag, but it's just not my thing. So you've not eaten at any of these restaurants before that has Doreen or gotten anything from these kiosks?
We stopped there. I remember, again, this was a while back, but we were with Michaela and it was started to rain. So we ran inside the Lotus Blossom Cafe and she got something there. I don't exactly remember what it was, but whatever she got, she really enjoyed. It was really good. And I think Michaela got something too from there. But I've never been in Nine Dragons. I'd love to just go inside and see what it looks like. It's probably super cool,
Yeah.
but I've not taken the time to do that. But we did stop at Lotus Blossom Cafe briefly.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Again, this is a pavilion I did not explore much as an adult. And so now I've like going back in and seeing all the different stuff. It is cool. So yeah, that's a little bit about the restaurants throughout these pavilions and then the character meet and greets. So once you walk up to World Showcase and you're getting ready to turn left towards Mexico or right towards Canada, when you go left, right now they have Asha from the movie Wish, and that was right before the Mexican pavilion in her own little pavilion, which I don't believe was there for very long. Like now, it is currently there now, but I think it maybe came out right after the movie came out. But I had seen that she was on the list last year when we were at Epcot, Dad, and my kids really liked this movie. It came out in 2023, so I guess last year when we were there, if she was there, it would have been newer. But I think I remember seeing her on the app. And it's a covered kind of pavilion. You do have to wait out in this line in the sun. But Eiley and I did do this meet and greet. It was very cute. She loves Asha, so that was all good and dandy. And they have a cute little backdrop for you to take your pictures with. So that was a fun one. She had a good time with that. And then Donald Duck is also right outside of the Mexico Pavilion, kind of wearing his traditional Mexican garb. He usually has a sombrero, sometimes maracas, a little poncho. He's really cute in his little outfit. And so that is usually right outside of the Mexican pavilion. And then obviously we talked about Anna and Elsa over in Norway. They're really the only characters that you can meet over there. And in China, they do have a Mulan meet and greet. I was looking back at old pictures and I actually have a picture of us with Mulan and Shang. I don't know if it was in Epcot. Some of these pictures, it's hard to tell exactly where the meet and greet was, but I think it's really cool that they used to have Shang. I wish that they would have kept them both. They do have Mulan over there in China. And those are kind of the characters in those areas. For being three different pavilions, having four sets of characters, that's pretty neat. So, a great place to get some autographs as you're moving through. You kind of have to look at the app to see what times they'll be out, but I do enjoy doing that now with Eiley and having her get her stuff signed. And for our old versus new today, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but what is your opinion on keeping the pavilions educational as they were or introducing IP to them if they fit? So the three Caballeros in Mexico, Anna and Elsa in Norway, Mulan going into China. We did talk about this a little bit, but what do you think about that versus keeping them strictly educational?
I would prefer them to stay educational.
Okay.
That's what it was originally intended to be. I know things change, and even Walt Disney said it's always, everything's always going to be changing. That's the whole idea. I would prefer it to be the way it was when I look at all the different things that were there. Yeah, I don't need to have Anna and Elsa, but that's me. I'm sure most kids, that are going again, they did it for the families more than anything, I'm sure. So I
Yeah.
understand why they did it, but I do miss some of the attractions and pavilions that were the way they were really intended to be as like the permanent World's Fair. And I really like that vibe, but I miss the fountains they've torn out, and I could go on and on. I'm sure we'll talk about all that stuff, but there's a lot of things there that they've taken out that I miss, and some things that needed to go, interventions and some of those places really had to go. So yeah, so I wish it was the old versus the old way versus a new way now with the IP.
I think as someone with young kids and someone who really loves Disney IP and Disney movies, I like that they've incorporated it. I do wish that they could have kept some of the old, but then built on with the new, like we talked about, like maybe keeping Maelstrom, but then making space for an actual attraction with Frozen as well, or something like that, or just having the meet and greet. I don't know, but I do think that it brings a little bit more, like you said, business to those areas of the park. And as somebody with kids, sometimes Epcot feels often, even now today, which we'll talk about too as we kind of move around to different spots, but it can get very trashy very quickly. And a lot of people go there to drink, and people are walking around super drunk with all these kids around. And so I think if there weren't the attractions or the IP things to go into, I might avoid this park a lot more just because of that. But I do really enjoy the IP additions that they've done. We're going to get into France later, but like Ratatouille back in France, I think it's cool because they added that onto the pavilion. They didn't really take anything away because of that. So if they could do more things like that, which I know a big constraint is space, but it would be neat to kind of have the best of both worlds, in my opinion, which can be hard to do, like I said, with space and money. But I think money is of no object a lot of times for Disney. So, moving on to our trivia for this week, our question for today is which country only has a restroom in their restaurant, not along the actual pathway of the pavilion? I don't know that I know the answer to this. Is it France, United Kingdom, Morocco, or Mexico?
Well, I know it's not Mexico. I don't think there's. You said a
Bathrooms
restroom
there.
inside the pavilion?
Yeah, so there's it only has a restroom in the restaurant, not along the pathway. My
In the
guess would be
restaurant.
Morocco because I think France, I'm trying to think where the bathrooms are in France. I know the UK has them. I know Mexico has them. So my
I would
guess is
say I'm going to say France.
okay. Let's see. It is France.
Oh wow,
Okay.
I got one right.
So it says it's really strange because all the rest have public restrooms. The closest one to France is Morocco. So Morocco does have a restroom that's just like a public restroom, but France it's only in the bathroom. Interest in the restaurant. That's very interesting. I did not know that. Okay. Well, we learned something new. I learned something new today. So that is a wrap on this week's episode. Next week, we're going to continue moving around the World Showcase in the clockwise route that y'all have picked. And then we will kind of finish up the episode after that in World Showcase before we move over to the other neighborhoods within Epcot. Epcot is a huge park with a lot to talk about and a lot of change over the years. So I think It's hard to say which park has had the most change, but I do feel like Epcot has had quite a bit of change, especially in the last 5 years compared to how it initially started. So excited to look into it. But thanks again for joining us, Dad, and we'll see y'all next week.
See you next week.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into our old versus new debates. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for our Spotify listeners, a follow and a 5-star review would mean the world. If you're listening on Apple, hit that 5-star button and leave us a written review as well. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.